Okay, so I'm here with Tara Wilson, president of Thrive POS. Tara, welcome to this great conversation that we're about to have. So thanks for taking some time for us. I'm Samantha Beeman, president of Integria Consulting, and we're inside the C-suite. We wanted to have a conversation with Tara Wilson and find out what it took to get to the C-suite, and maybe have probably have an enlightening conversation. For those of you who are listening in, please feel free to add your comments, any questions that you might have in the chat, and we're going to get through it probably at quarter to the end of the hour. Okay, so Tara, I've been looking forward to this all week. Talk to me about your career, right? Like, how did you even get here? This is not your first C-suite position, but can you walk us through your career journey and kind of share some of the experiences that shaped you and got you into the C-suite?
Yeah, happy to. And thank you again for inviting me. I'm excited to have the conversation today. I think I would say my career started in Ontario. I was born and raised in Peterborough, Ontario, and I think that's where kind of everything started. I studied electronics engineering, and my first job was at a company called Minix, and we were supporting Apple computers. So it was really cool. It was my first real exposure to process and knowledge management. I think Apple had such a, and probably still does, such a thoughtful model. There was clear documentation, and it was, there was tiered support and step-by-step guidance. So I think it was the first time I truly understood what good looked like when it came to building scalable, repeatable processes. And then eventually I moved to Montreal. I followed a boy here, which is a story for a different LinkedIn Live for sure. But no, I have no idea where he is now. But that move really changed everything. It brought me into the payments world. I started in data entry at a payment processing company, kind of working the 12 to 9 shift, and I fell in love with fintech. I really was fascinated how the technology could drive efficiency and solve financial problems. So over time, I moved through a lot of different roles. I was building terminal files. I was in the contact center, operations, account management. So I sat in a lot of different seats and really tried to learn the foundational pillars of the business. Mm-hmm. So I think that's when I really became operationally focused. Problem solving became my thing. I liked it. I managed, over a 13-year period, hundreds of employees. And I really, grew up inside that business and kind of learned what, organizational structure and, knowledge management meant to deploy it. It was one thing to be, to be sitting in it, and then it was another thing to deploy it. So eventually, 13 years, I reached a path where I wanted to continue to grow. I was the director of operations at that time. And the path where I was, it kind of felt limited. So I had a wonderful recruiter reach out to me pretty much the same week that I was having conversations about opportunities inside the business where I was at. They reached out about a VP of operations role at another payments company called PaySafe. And I interviewed, and I loved the people, and I made the leap. It was a very wonderful experience. I'm quite nostalgic about it still. Super supportive leadership and amazing teams. And I just had a lot of freedom to build and explore. I started with a small group. I think my team was 12 people, and it grew very, very quickly. Was working with onboarding and account management and relationship management. And then later I was asked to manage a team in Cambridge. So I was traveling monthly to London. And I did that for 14 months in a row every month. Yeah. So it was fun. It was great. A lot of experience, very demanding, but really, really rewarding. And that company then acquired a business about a year before they came to me, and they asked me to run it. And they said, look, it's all operational, and it's in your wheelhouse. it was not in my wheelhouse or operational. It was highly technical. It was complete new territory for me. I had never managed a P&L to that level. I was Googling things under the table. I had no idea really what I was doing. A lot of YouTube videos and studying, and it pushed me really far out of my comfort zone. But I think, it also taught me courage and growth. And we led through COVID, and it was a really, it was a wonderful experience, and had a really great team. And again, nostalgia. Then I went to a startup. I was at a startup, things changed, leadership changed at that organization. So I ended up going to a startup. I was there for about a year, not a super long time. And then unfortunately, my father had, been diagnosed with dementia. So at that time, I just felt like it was time, for the first time in my career, actually, to just step back and focus on family. Yeah. So it was a good almost 2 years. We just, my brother and I, he was in Ontario and I'm here in Montreal. We just went in and kind of cleaned everything and organized. And, my father used to be in construction. And so we had a garage full of tools that we were selling. I should actually add estate manager to my resume now, because there was a lot. So at that same time, I started a consulting company with the longtime colleague. We worked on a lot of really cool projects, all under NDA, but it really, kept me involved and helped me grow and gave me the flexibility I needed to, to be able to support my family at a really important time.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that it really reminded me of was I really like building, but I like shared success. I had this great opportunity to build, and I'm like, here's this awesome thing. And then I had to leave, and I didn't get to, enjoy. So, I realized that consulting, and I'm still doing, a little bit of consulting here and there, but really I wanted to get back to that, being part of a team and like seeing like the long-term impact of the work that we do together. So that's what led me to my current role as president of Thrive. We're a company that builds, point of sale technology for independent restaurant operators, specifically in the pizza space. It's been a really great fit, and the work is exciting, and the people are incredible. And I can already tell. I think when you start a chapter, you get a good vibe on whether it's going to be one of those chapters that's going to be when you look back on fondly, and that's how I'm feeling. So that's the career path. Yeah, that's the journey.
Something that struck me was, a lot of times when we're speaking with early talent, they're thinking ahead to, I want to be a manager, right? And like a lot of us have been there. We're like, we just want to lead, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you had an engineering degree and you started your career in data entry. So I find that really interesting. But I mean, it sounds like it helped you kind of build. You had some building blocks in there. And so do you want to just like talk about that a little bit? Because I think that sometimes people feel like, yeah, I've got this degree. There's no way I'm going to start doing something entry level like that. I want something that's bigger and feels better. So what's your thought on that?
I think I was definitely a product of my environment. I didn't necessarily see a lot of people around me that were utilizing their degrees in maybe specific ways. That they would get a degree, you would go to school, and then you would get a job, and whether it was related or not, and sometimes it would be and sometimes it wouldn't. I think I felt, I went, my specialty was like telephony and telecommunications. I think working at Apple to me was kind of that step. So when I went in and applied, to Minix, I knew it was Apple. I knew people, there was a whole bunch of people from my program that went there and that were growing there. And so I think it was there. And then I went to, a fintech organization. I wish I could say that there was some some part of me that was deliberate, but I think I was living my life. I, really did follow a boy in Montreal, and he was working at that company. And so I went there, and it's, I guess, as Bob Ross says, like the happy little accident that happened is that I became passionate about it. And the foundational learning I had helped me grow, in that kind of space.
I think that it's refreshing to hear that there wasn't ego attached to it, right? That you saw it as building blocks. So I think that's interesting. I think that some people feel like, oh, maybe I should shoot for the stars right away, and then they feel disappointed. So I love that story. I think it's a good lesson for all of us, right? That you don't have to, aim for a leadership role right out of the gate. Like, take your time and learn, and start, start putting your tools together to be able to build your career.
I think people sometimes will say, I'm an ops person or I'm a biz dev person. And I don't necessarily think that's the right approach. I think you should be an everything person. Having the opportunity to sit in a lot of different seats can really help you gain perspective on the pillars of what is important in business. And so I think when I came to Montreal too, I was like, I'm not going to be here for long. I'll just do what I can. And then, 22 plus years later, here I am. And so I don't know, maybe even at that stage, how seriously I took myself or what I was doing. And then, along the way, I went, oh, I actually like this, and I feel good, and I'm passionate, and I'm proud of what I'm doing. And so I think that shift kind of happened organically.
Interesting. So when you think back to those times, the first time that you thought, you know what, I'm ready for an executive role, like I'm actually ready. Like, what was the defining moment for you? Like, how did you actually realize or recognize that you were ready for that next step? Because, I find sometimes we are approaching talent that is, we're trying to give them their external promotion, I call it, right? And a lot of times, more women than men, I have to admit, will say, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And I'm like, why don't you feel ready? Right? So how did you know you were ready?
I don't know if, if there's like a moment where you kind of go, this is it. This is what I'm ready for, or I've made it. I think there was a lot of unexpected turns kind of along the way, and some of them were professional, like being asked to lead an acquisition that was way more technical than what I was prepared for. And, some were personal, navigating family loss and challenges, and trying to stay present for my teams and my family and myself during those times. I guess each of those moments, I think, built something in me. Maybe the ability to trust my judgment, to stay calm in chaos, and I guess to make decisions when there wasn't a perfect playbook. I would say one defining moment came when I realized that leadership wasn't about having all the right answers. It was about creating an environment where answers can grow and can surface. And so I think I used to believe that leadership was about proving that I belonged to be in the room. That's that. And then I learned that it was about really making space for others to belong to. And so there were experiences that showed me what good leadership was, and there were experiences that showed me what bad leadership was. And I think I had to experience all of that. Earlier in my career, I was in situations where I don't think the culture felt healthy. People were afraid to speak up and share ideas. And I don't want to make it sound like that was everywhere. You can have pockets of those experiences depending on who your leader is. And so I think that those types of experiences taught me what kind of leader I wanted to be, and to lead with professionalism and to advocate for my team. And I try to treat everyone who I work with as partners. It's not really about hierarchy. I don't see it that way. I think that's maybe when I saw the difference between managing and leading was, managing is like giving is directing work, and leadership is more about inspiring trust and lifting people up and giving them clarity and showing them that, I guess, even when things are hard, we're all in it together. So I don't know, to come back to your question, I don't think, for me anyways, I don't think I ever felt completely ready for executive leadership. I think maybe and I don't know if you should, I think you should feel like, every new challenge is an opportunity. And I think the moment you feel like you're ready for something and you've made it, maybe you give your permission to stop, your permission to yourself to stop growing. I think, I think it's really about, managing decisions and choices and staying grounded and knowing that your lessons aren't going to stop. So I think it's just being brave enough to take on that next challenge and trusting in yourself.
I want to thank you, Tara, for being vulnerable to share with us, about your father's declining health, because you sharing that, maybe it gives people permission in a way to step away from work when they need to tend to their personal lives, right? And there's things that go on. I mean, people go through really, really very, very tough situations. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to power through. And I think you've provided a really human example of being able to step away. And okay, not everybody can step away. Some people are like, I can't afford to do that. But if you can, to be able to step away and take care of yourself, of your loved ones, sometimes your loved ones and yourself at the same time. And do you feel that, you came back to the workforce more kind of refreshed and centered after being able to really focus just on family instead of being split in two?
Yes. I absolutely do. I think that there was no world where I was going to be able to feel good about the work that I was doing and dealing with the situation I was dealing with. And I am very grateful and privileged to have been able to step away the way that I did. Having experience to be able to start a consulting company and to be able to keep kind of that the economics going, as well as being able to. And one of the best things I think that came out of COVID, from a work standpoint, I don't want to get too far down, but is being remote and and that becoming part of an accepted way of working. And so without that, this would have been a very challenging time for me to be able to, to continue to keep a pulse. And I had to, keep myself motivated when you're in those moments of, it's a lot. It's a lot when you're in those moments. You do want to kind of have a little bit of normalcy. And so that's kind of what the consulting did for me. But I do think it's really important for people to be transparent about what they're going through in a way that they're comfortable with. If your leadership doesn't understand that something's going on, I think it's really easy for them to make assumptions. I think that maybe you're not engaged or you're demotivated. So sharing those things, I think, is really important, so you can get the support you need. And if you don't get support, then it might not be the right place for you.
And as a leader, asking your team members why they are seemingly disengaged and what's going on. I mean, not everybody wants to be as open, but taking an interest, I think, in your team members is so important, right? And
absolutely. Yeah.
So talking about COVID, I'm thinking about, I do have a question about how you've been able to, lead fast performing, like building high performing teams and in fast moving industries. But, the past couple of years, we've really seen that people are working more remotely, right? Or at least hybrid. I know there's a lot of concerns out there by leaders in terms of how do you build those teams? How do you make sure that, productivity remains high? How do you do that? Whether it's, hybrid or remote, like how have you been able to do that throughout your career?
I think for me, building high performing teams, it starts with clarity really and alignment. I don't think people can move fast if they don't know what they're solving for. So I think you really need to make sure that every person and every team really understands how their work connects to the broader business goals. And you might not be able to do that, day one or even, month 3. Like it takes time to really understand the business and to understand kind of the bones that that's underneath it and that it's built on. But I think when you give people that context, it helps build ownership. And so coupled with that is structure. I'm very focused on, I'm smiling because anyone would tell you, I'm very focused on repeatable, reliable, accessible frameworks that people operate or can operate confidently, especially when things are changing quickly, or maybe actually even when things are changing quickly. Yeah. So I think you do that or I've done that by putting in clear metrics and scorecards and accountability loops. So everybody is on the same page and they know where we stand. And so success, especially in remote environments, I think success has to become really visible through those types of metrics and scorecards. And it's become shared instead of individual. So you really need that kind of visibility. And then, through that too, it's accessibility. So I can be a really hands-on leader. I don't ask teams to do much that I haven't done. So I have a lot of understanding because I have sat in all those seats. And I hope that's one of the reasons why I am a good leader, is because I have a lot of understanding and empathy for having to sometimes manage or work in a situation that you didn't create yourself. You're being, told like, hey, you have to share this information or do this task. And, I think that's why it's really important to be transparent so people can understand why they're being asked to do what they're doing. And, if something needs to be fixed or improved, if I have the experience and I can support, then I'll roll up my sleeves always and just stand right beside them. And I think that's how you build credibility. And to circle back, it's communication as well, right? So fast moving industries come with really constant change, and you have to over communicate. One-on-ones, the team huddles, the leadership syncs, your stand-ups to make sure that you're keeping the energy positive, that you're aligned, priorities are clear, and the why is connected. Everybody is connected to the why. So when people, I would say, I find when people feel clarity and structure and trust, and you have open communication, they'll perform at their best because they are confident and not chaotic. And that's kind of what drives that transformation. It's not just about building high performing teams, but like building teams that stay high performing even when everything is changing around them.
It's interesting because when you talk about accountability, one of the traps that, managers fall into is micromanaging when they're trying to build that accountability, right? So they sometimes think that I'm going to make you accountable, but I'm going to be on top of you to make sure that you are accountable and that you're doing things the way I want you to do them, versus, leading leaders, for example, and kind of, cultivating that in them. So can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to build that accountability without micromanaging?
Yeah, I think, there's a big part of it that, it's building an organization where people can understand what good looks like, and, they can measure it, and they can deliver it without constant supervision. So kind of tying back to those frameworks. And I believe that structure creates freedom. And I know that might sound the opposite of what a lot of people think, but when people know what success looks like and how to get there, and they can feel empowered to make decisions without waiting for permission. So I think accountability lives in clarity and not in control. So,
oh, I love that, in clarity and in control. You know, I mean, we all see it all over LinkedIn where people are saying, well, if our leaders trusted us more, we could work remotely, or we could be in a, you know, more hybrid situation. I've come to recognize that a lot of organizations, no matter how large, don't always have the right tools in place. They haven't documented processes. They haven't set up systems and processes so that it's robust. And so, I mean, what's your thinking on that? Like, how important is it for organizations to invest in the right technology and the right tools to be able to support their people?
I am such an advocate for knowledge management. It is like a tagline of mine. I am back to the repeatable, reliable, accessible processes. You have to give people the tools in the toolbox they need to be successful for them to build. And I think that, you know, depending on the type of organizations, you know, you'll find that you've got a lot of tacit knowledge inside of the space, and it's not documented, and you have, you know, your two people that know how to do the process. And I know sometimes people say, oh, what if they get hit by a bus? I like to say, if they win the lottery, I like to try to put it, what if they both win the lottery and then they're gone the next day? Well, that's what you call, you know, single points of failure. So being able to document and making sure, and it's not just about if they win the lottery, people should be able to take vacations. They need to take breaks. They need to have space. If they don't have things that are documented and built out, and workflows and processes that are, you know, agreed upon and cross-departmental, they don't even get an opportunity to grow. People will want them to stay because they're going to, what are we going to do without this person who they're the only one who knows how to do it? So I think it's extremely important. And I think it is part of what success looks like when you are working with remote teams, to be able to provide them, again, the structure they need to be successful. Here's your knowledge base. Hey, how do I communicate when something's missing or something's not working? And, you know, there's a lot of, I have always been someone who can get really detailed and, you know, find all the nuances, and would write these huge processes and, you know, my Visios. And now there's tools like Scribe where you're using, you know, AI and different types of, you know, amazing tools to be able to walk someone through a process. It's documented. You can embed it somewhere. It's a living, you know, a dynamic document. I just think it's so important, and it's so much easier than it used to be. You just got to start. You just got to start. Sometimes it's overwhelming, especially if you have years and years of information. Just start. Today is the day. Run fun, you know, contests inside your business, knowledge management. You know, a lot of people, you know, the other part of that too is when you have those documented processes, it allows for you to offer self-service. I am someone who prefers, who has managed contact centers for over 20 years, doesn't want to get on the phone with anyone at a contact center. I just don't. I just want to be able to solve the issue myself. So I love companies, and I always choose a company that has, you know, extensive documentation and knowledge management that I can go into and I can try to solve the problem. And so I think that's really where that's the evolution of your end customer, is giving them the tools they need as well to be successful.
Yeah. Well, you know, it makes me think of, you know, poor onboarding practices. Sometimes it has nothing to do with human resources, right? So you get the swag, and you've got your desk, and, you know, you were taken out for lunch, and then you get to your desk after, you've been introduced to everybody in the company and their dog, and you're like, where do I find X? And you have to go see, Brenda over in accounting, and you need to go see, like what kind of onboarding is that? People today, we're 2025. People want an onboarding that, like, give me the information so that I can start my job instead of trying to find the information for 6 months, right? And pull on different strings to be able to, finally get some achievable results, right?
As a proficiency, it matters, right? So how soon you can get someone up to speed and working at their, at the level that they need to be, it matters. And I think those, they talk about the first 90 days, like there's a great book, and that, it matters everywhere. It matters, the first 90 days matter for the customer. It matters for leadership. It matters for your team that's coming in as well. If they have a bad experience or a poor experience, I think that really sets the tone. So you're right, having to find information or to look in several different spots can be challenging. I think too that there is a lot of companies, or there are a lot of companies that are trying to make that change. So when you're coming into an organization and you can see they're actively working towards it, I think that's a really good sign. So, I don't want to say to people, if they don't have a documented lead. No, if you see that they're talking about it and they care about it, be part of that change.
Right. Or they've hired somebody whose role is to streamline processes.
Yes, exactly.
So you've worked for, small and large, startup and global enterprises. How have you adapted your leadership style to these different organizational stages?
So leadership, I think, regardless of where you are, just always starts with listening. So when I walk into a new environment, whether it's a startup or a large enterprise, I try to take time to understand the rhythm of the business and the people who are making it run, because every organization really just has its own culture and its own history. And I don't think that you can lead effectively until you really see and hear and kind of feel how it operates. So in startup, leadership is hands-on and super scrappy, and you're building what you're running. So your communication and your decision-making, I think, has to be really fast. So you are in the details. And I think that's, one reason why, like, as a hands-on leader, I feel like I can kind of go from startup, to larger organizations, and you're there to help clear obstacles and make sure that everyone knows what matters in that moment, because it's going to change the next day. You're going to, things move so fast. Whereas, when you're in a large enterprise, the focus shifts, I think, a lot to scale and influence. So you have to lead through structure and process and, cross-functional collaboration. And it becomes a lot more about enabling instead of doing. And so giving your leaders, the clarity and the tools to carry the vision of the business and yourself kind of forward. If you try to move every single piece yourself, you won't be successful. So you really got to build the trust and trust the people to, I think, to create momentum at scale. And so the other thing I think that's really important when going into, an organization that's, legacy, or that's been around a long time, that has, those bones, is just not to focus or judge on past decisions. I really say to myself, and I think every leader who does this should say to themselves, who am I to make judgment on what was prioritized before I joined the organization? I think when you take that approach, people will feel much more comfortable and open with you, and it builds trust. So if you start and you come in and you go, well, why did you do that? And that's the wrong way. And this was a dumb way to do it. Why'd you build it this way? You're just going to shut people down, because they could have been the ones who built it that way. So and I think you stop transparency. So if you show respect for the past, even though if you know things need to change, and that's why you've come into the business, it really creates space for that collaboration, and you should appreciate, you're there for a reason now, and where all those things that they did before got them to where they are. So, I don't think anybody is perfect, and no organization has made all the, the right moves. So, it's just something that is a core. It's a core value for me when going into any business is not to pass judgment, and just, try to be really self-aware of that as a leader.
Tara, that's extremely refreshing. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. And I've spoken to a lot of leaders.
Thanks.
I don't think I have ever heard anybody say that before. Like it is really, it's, I mean, and you're right. Like who are you to say that when they're trying to build X, Y, and Z, and, really so let me ask you, I mean, when did you first have that reflection?
I had that reflection, I think, when a leader did it to me.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I had to put it to, well, why this? Why this? Why this? And I think as when you're doing consulting, it's very different, than working inside of an organization. And it's almost part of the culture, I think, in consulting to go, you've done all of this wrong, I'll fix it. And here's the bill, I'll fix it. And I think that, it was maybe a little more, I had someone do it to me, and I don't know if I could have articulated it then, but when I was doing some of the consulting, I started to realize that when I asked questions in a different way about the why, and I didn't judge it, and I asked it in a more of a safe kind of conversation, I got so much more, and I understood, and people were open, because it's often the people you're talking to who made those decisions, and so you're immediately starting off on the wrong foot.
Wow. That's a really great reflection. I had goosebumps from that. That was amazing. Yeah, I'm going to quote you.
Thank you.
Wilson said.
If that's the quote that comes, I'm happy. That's good quotes. Always good quotes. I have no complaints. I don't
know if anybody else is having a big aha moment here, but that was fantastic. And we've had a couple of them now, so that's really good. Okay. I do have a question around data points, KPIs. One of the things that I've come to recognize is when organizations, this is just my perspective, but I've noticed when organizations are making a lot of money, they don't necessarily see what's broken, right? And it's only when there's a little bit of a pain point that they start going, wait a second, what happened here, and digging through, and maybe we need to hire somebody who can kind of get us through this. And they don't always build out their KPIs, right? Or they're not looking at data I don't want to say in the right way, but from a way that's going to help their business, let's say. So how is it that you have come to use data and customer insights to make decisions at the executive level?
I think that data and customer insights are about telling the story behind the numbers. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's just about reporting on what happened. I think it's understanding why it happened and what you need to do next. And that good data should guide the conversation and not end it. And so I think that's a little bit about what you're talking about, is that people think they have the data and, okay, here's the numbers, good. No, that should be the beginning of the conversation. So I would say I look at data through maybe 3 different lenses. One would be performance, behavior, and opportunity. So performance shows us what we're doing today. So things like retention and net promoter score, onboarding timelines, customer satisfaction trends. And then I think behavior reveals how customers are actually using your products and services. So where does that friction exist? What are the patterns that are emerging? And then opportunity, I think, is really about spotting, the value and like, how can we create new revenue streams? How can we create value for the business and for the customer? And then how do you package insights that customers themselves find useful? Because everyone today wants insights and they want to be able to utilize them to help them be successful. So product usage, I think, is a really big part of that. So, if you're in a SaaS environment and, for simplicity terms, let's say you have a platform with 10 different offerings, but the customers are only using like 6 or 7. I think that's a signal. Why aren't they using the rest? Are they not aware of them? Do they not find them valuable? Do they not fit their needs? Product utilization, I think, tells you where your customers are getting value and where they're not, and where you need to focus your time and resources. And again, so all of this ties in with your metrics, and having honest conversations with your customers about what they're using and what they're not and why, and just making sure that you need to make sure that you're developing features and experiences that actually matter to them, and that you're not just building for the sake of building. And I think that's what some of that data, I think that's really a big part of what data should be used for, is the utilization of your product. And I'm speaking very specifically in environments that I grew up in. So pairing quantitative data with qualitative insights. So metrics tell part of the story, and then the customer's voice will bring it to life. So getting that direct feedback, the why, churn, why are you leaving, why are you staying? People have exit interviews all the time. What about stay interviews? Yeah. Why are you here still? Why are you with us still? And that, just on a side note, that can be not only for your customers, but for your people as well. Have stay interviews, not just exit. It's too late when they're gone. It's too late to have those conversations when they left. Why are you staying? I'm staying because of this reason, but also this is the problem. So when you have kind of like that open communication, you'll be able to find what's working for the customer, what's not, and then bring it all together. And then just to wrap up from a technical standpoint, so now you have all this data. What are you going to do with it? You have to use the right tools. So your dashboards and your scorecards, and of course, AI and machine learning models. Yeah. And it's important to do that, but only when it ties back into the business, not just like injecting like, hey, I've got AI, because you want to say that you have AI, right? Which is, again, like a whole other conversation. I can't remember the article. I'll probably remember, 2 o'clock. Yeah, but I read a really good article that said executives don't need more data; they need the right data. So I think, like in recent thinking, there's a big emphasis, and I think a really exciting one, where you are utilizing AI to kind of sift through the complexities of all of the data that you have, and then highlighting the insights that matter the most for your business, and then using them. So they have to be accessible and they have to be actionable, and then everyone should kind of see the work that connects to the outcomes based off this data. So real-time dashboards, that's something. Not you can look at something in a month and look at the executive level. The goal isn't more reports, right? Like, it's not more reports, and that it's better decisions that move the business forward. And so, like, knowing what numbers equal that, like, I think that's what you should be using the data for.
Perfect. To our listeners today, I mean, if you have any questions for Tara, we have another 15 minutes left. I've got a lot of questions, so I can keep going. But if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments section, and I'll keep checking to see if there's anything that Tara can answer. Okay. I just want to shift gears. Anybody who looks at your LinkedIn profile will see a number of accolades and people that you have led in the past who really they speak so highly about your leadership style that's really resonated with them. I want to touch on how inclusive of a leader you are. And you're somebody who inspires trust. I mean, throughout this conversation, that's really what struck me, is that you're really somebody who I could see why people would want to be coached by you and have you as their leader. So when we talk about DEI transformations, right, with high employee engagement, you've done that. So what's the secret to making inclusion part of the business strategy, and not just having it as this kind of side initiative, especially in a time where we're seeing, our neighbors to the south really pulling away from DEI and, inclusive hiring, inclusive, vernacular. So what would you say has made you an impactful leader in this way? Like, how have you done it?
I think the biggest misconception about DEI is that it's a tick box exercise. And if you haven't gone through it, and if you haven't experienced it, then maybe that's all you know. I think real inclusion is about how people experience your company every single day. And it's about whether they feel seen and heard and valued for who they are and what they bring to the organization. Inclusion to me is having people believe that their voice matters and that their perspectives are respected and that they can contribute meaningfully to the organization. It can show up in really simple forms, like making sure that everybody has access to tools that they need to be successful, which we've talked about. If everyone on the sales team has a company phone, but the account managers don't, that's not equitable. And equity can be found even in those small little operational details. And I don't want to oversimplify it at all. I just think it's a really, unique example of how little things can show up as inclusion. And often, there's a misconception that inclusion means, more about who you are as a person, or race and identity and orientation. And that can definitely be part of it. It can also be as simple as, giving someone a working computer, something that's new and works, and other people don't have it. That's not inclusive. It's not inclusive that the team over here that works for the CEO's best friend gets to have, all of the cool things and the other team doesn't. So I think that I've learned that inclusion kind of has to be woven into how decisions are made and not just how programs are launched. You have to embed fairness, and you have to have transparency and belonging into the way that you run the business. I have a philosophy that I've talked about many times before, and it's the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule. So the golden rule is to do unto others as they want to be done unto, the golden rule is to do unto others as you want to be done unto, but the platinum rule is to do unto others as they want to be done unto. So that means you need to understand people as individuals. How does this person like feedback? How do we motivate this person? What gives them stress? How do they communicate when they're unsure? So I think DEI as well is about caring for people as whole humans, both professionally and personally. So creating that type of environment really takes intention. And so having regular conversations, giving people a voice in decisions, inviting them to be part of the solution, making sure that their ideas are genuinely considered. Again, not just a tick box. Like you're actually you're hearing to listen, not just listening to reply, and that people know that it's safe to speak up. So I think belonging is a big part of that. There's DEIB, and a lot of conversation about that, and the B stands for belonging. Show up as yourself, contribute freely. I think when people feel that, everything improves, and that there's a lot of statistics that show that when people feel like they're respected and appreciated and included, that the culture and the conversation and the performance and the business is more successful. So I think at the end of the day, people want to feel good about where they work. They want to know that when they have a bad day, they're going to be surrounded by good people, and they want them to succeed. And I don't think, that's not a program, that's culture. And that's what inclusion looks like.
Perfect. Let's talk about how you've hatched other leaders.
Hatched.
Leaders. I mean, how have you mentored other leaders to really to create pathways for success? Like, how have you been able to identify people on your team that you think you're going to be a great leader? I want to work with you. I want to develop you. Like, what did that look like throughout your career? And actually, so who did it for you? Right?
Yeah, I have some great people who did it for me. I'll even call them by name. So hopefully one of these days they'll see it. I definitely, Damien Tannenbaum was someone who spent a lot of time with me. Susan Horn was someone who spent a lot of time with me. I worked with, very closely with a lot of people at PaySafe, a lot of the key leaders there. There are too many to name, but I'm thinking of all of you right now. They spent a lot of time with me. They advocated for me. They made me believe in myself, I think. I think, mentoring future leaders really has to do with being honest. And I had some people be really honest with me. And at the time, I did not appreciate it at all. Upon reflection, they talked to me about the things that I needed to hear. So they didn't just say what I wanted to hear. They told me the hard truth about the things that I was doing well and the things that I was not doing well. And that, it matters. I think the way you deliver a message matters too. Like you can do it in a way that's kind. And when mentoring, you should talk about success for sure. But I think sometimes success is apparent. You're sitting, in the room with them and having a conversation. You should talk more about the failures and kind of those missteps and like the lessons learned. And I think those are really the most valuable conversations and stories to share. I think career pathing is extremely important, creating pathways for internal talent. Just coming back to the platinum rule again, like everybody is motivated differently. Some people want recognition, some people want challenge, some people want to work a 9 to 5 and they do a darn good job at it. And that's okay. There's space for everybody. And some don't even know what they want yet. So good mentorship is helping people figure it out, having those honest conversations, and like pulling the things out of them that light them up. And someone said this somewhere along the way. I think curiosity is the bridge to growth, and I think that's such a great quote.
It's fantastic. I mean, from what you've shared, it makes a lot of sense that people need to be open to feedback if they want to grow, right? Because if you feel defensive, and you might feel that might be your instinct, but I do all this other stuff, and now you're criticizing like this part of my work, right? But I think it's that ability to reflect and then go back and, we've all had to go back and suck our thumb and cry in the ground and then come back and be like, okay, I heard the feedback. My ego is bruised, but how can I grow from this, right?
Yeah. Being self-aware is really important, and how you show up in those moments. If you're asking for feedback and you get it and you dismiss it or you react in a certain way, you're never going to get it again. So if I feel that way about surveying customers as well. If you're surveying the customers and you're asking them what they want and you're not planning to action them, action the insights that come back, don't ask. Because it's just a tick box exercise. There's no value in it. So if you're going to ask for feedback, then you should action it. Or if you disagree with it, you should just at least hear it, and then you can let it sit and you can take it for
What it is,
whatever you want to take it for.
With employee surveys, same thing, right? A number of organizations run these employee surveys, sometimes annually, but then, employee disengagement starts to grow because they're asking us these questions, but they're not actioning anything, right?
Yeah, and I've run start, stop, continue exercises before. So what do you want to start doing in the business? What should stop and what should you continue? And that became our roadmap on how we moved forward. And I think it was a really great exercise. We had fun with it. We kind of had jars and people put their notes in, and we made it very clear. If you're giving feedback, it doesn't mean that you put that's your note in the jar. We wanted it to be anonymous. And the organization where it was, is there was a lot of damage to the business, to the trust of the business inside, the employees. And so when we said we're going to do an anonymous survey, they said it won't be anonymous, and you're gonna hold it against us. So sometimes when you're working with, in situations like that, you got to be scrappy. So back to paper and pen and some jars on a table and open conversation. But yeah, I think you have to be able to accept feedback. I have a tagline. I call it having a tagline. Sometimes when you get feedback, you can't help it. People say that they're not passionate or tied to efforts or work that they've done. I mean, good on them. It's not me. If I have worked hours and worked really hard for a program, and I get feedback that is discouraging, doesn't mean I don't want to hear it. Sometimes, I know what happens with me. My face gets red, like I can feel it. Sometimes I make make a weird noise, like right here. So I have a tagline, and I say, thank you very much for the feedback. I'm going to take some time to reflect on it. And sometimes when you're in those moments, you don't know what to say, and your reaction really matters. So having that in your pocket, knowing that you have this kind of safe verbiage to hand out so you can reflect. It's like when people say when you're really mad to write the email but not to send it, and then to come back and act. It's kind of the same thing. Just give yourself the space.
That's excellent. I love that. So we have 3 minutes left. Some quick fire questions. What is a daily or weekly habit that helps you stay on top of things as a leader or effective? Like, is there something that you do that it's part of your mantra for the week?
Time blocking. Time blocking. Again, time blocking. And very intentionally, I'm going to work on this at this time. I'm going to work on this at this time. If I don't, my calendar is full, and then I'm feeling like, I'm having to do this stuff at 5 o'clock, and I'm not my best after hours because I've given everything. We do no meeting Wednesdays. It's my favorite thing as well. I give myself the space, and I'm having great, feedback from the team that they're like, thank you.
Just no meeting Wednesdays.
No meeting Wednesdays.
Book, podcast, conference that's had a lasting impact on you? Anything you want to share?
Sure. I really like Kim Scott's Radical Candor.
Yes.
It changed the way that I thought about leadership and feedback, and it was kind of that aha moment that made me go, okay, this makes sense. So it's a really simple idea. I'm going to care personally and challenge directly. And I'm going to, I talked about caring about the whole person. I think that's super important. So Kim Scott is wonderful. I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I really like CEO, the Diary of a CEO. I think it's great. So many different people on there. And then there's one that I listen to just for fun. It's called Two Hot Takes. It's two hosts that read, or a host and guest host that read Reddit stories that are ridiculous. It is such good brain candy. If I don't want to have, like, I really like it. So yeah.
This was, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Tara, you're fantastic. And, I didn't get a chance to ask some other questions, but I know that you have won multiple awards for your leadership, and I can certainly see why. I think Thrive is really fortunate to have you on the team, and we're looking forward to seeing what incredible things that you're going to be doing with the organization. So thank you for coming on today. It's really been such a pleasure. It's been fun.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I really appreciated the conversation, and maybe we should schedule a year from now, and we can see how the year's gone.
Amazing. Perfect. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much, Tara. Take care.
Thanks.